Hey everyone, this is Vanessa Chase. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to this week's storytelling nonprofit Google Hangout. Hope you're having a good week so far. I'm going to give everyone just a couple minutes here to join our call because I know that it usually takes a few minutes for people to get on. So if you're here already, welcome. So glad you could be here. It's always great to have so many folks join us for our weekly call. I've really been enjoying these. Been doing this now for about 3 or 4 weeks, I think. And I'd love to know if it's been helpful for you. I know we have a different group of people every week who seem to join us for these calls, but I hope that they've been really helpful for you, that you've been getting a lot of value out of them, have an opportunity to get some of your questions answered. And I hope that today we have a good topic in store. I'm going to be talking about getting board members to fundraise, which is always a hot topic for a lot of fundraisers. And I'm hoping it'll be really useful for a lot of you who are thinking about your own boards and engaging them a little bit more in development and philanthropy. So a bit about me, for those of you who are new to these Hangouts, maybe if you heard about it through my website or over on Twitter somewhere. My name is Vanessa Chase, and I run the storytellingnonprofit.com, and I do consulting and communications work for nonprofits to help them tell their stories better and to help them raise money. And I've been doing this for a couple years now. I really love it. It's such a joy to help organizations find success in telling a really strong narrative and a strong story about their work. And these Hangouts are an opportunity for me to answer some of your questions that you have about storytelling or fundraising, and to be able to share a little bit about what I'm learning with you and some of the things that I'm working on as well, because I often am working on some pretty cool projects. I love to be able to tell people about them. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started then, because I see a few people who are joining us. Before I do that, though, I'll say for some reason the Q&A feature does not seem to be working. It keeps telling me it's disabled, which is unfortunate. So if you'd like to ask a question, and I hope you do, the best way to do that is to go over to the Google Plus event page where you probably are watching this video now. And you'll notice that underneath the video broadcast, there's like a little comment box. So leave your questions there. That's the best place for me to find them. But in the event that the Q&A starts working again, we'll use that too. Okay, so this week, I want to talk about getting board members to tell your organization's story and to fundraise on behalf of your nonprofit. So let's dive into this. So here's the big challenge that I know a lot of you are facing. And if you also face this, let me know. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. So many people come to me and say, I just need my board to fundraise. They are not fundraising. What can I do to get my board members engaged? Huge problem, right, for so many organizations. And if you're listening to this and nodding along, know that you're not alone. I myself have faced this problem as well. And I know a number of other people who have as well. So there's a number of ways and a number of reasons that we come to this challenge. So first, we probably haven't made expectations clear with our board members to help them understand that fundraising is expected, but not in the way that they think. It doesn't always have to be that they're out hustling for gifts or networking in a way that doesn't feel comfortable to them. There's a much better way to approach this, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The other reason this is a challenge is because people come to the table with all sorts of misconceptions about what fundraising is and what it's not. And I think that this is probably the biggest challenge, right, is that we as fundraisers or executive directors, we really have to reframe what fundraising is for our board members. They think it's just about asking for money. They use a lot of phrases and words that, I think most fundraisers would probably not identify with, things like, hitting them up for money or, things like that just seem kind of, disrespectful and don't really represent the spirit of philanthropy as a lot of us know it. So I think one of the challenges that we face is helping board members to understand what fundraising actually is. It's part of this bigger ecosystem of philanthropy. And philanthropy is this really feel-good activity for a lot of people. People give because they want to do good in the community, because they want to give back. There's all sorts of good reasons why people are invested in being a philanthropist or a donor to an organization. And every time we ask them to participate in philanthropy, we're giving them the opportunity to do good in the community, to have those warm, fuzzy feelings that we know people love from when they give. So helping people understand, helping your board members specifically understand that asking people to donate is actually a really awesome opportunity for a lot of people. And it's something that they feel really happy about. They're happy that they got asked. They're happy they have this opportunity to give. I think is really helpful, and reminding them that, asking them, how has it felt for you when you've been asked for donations before? What experiences were good? What experiences were bad? What were the differences between those two times? And what could you do differently when you engage potential donors in a fundraising ask? How would you want to be asked, and how could you use your own experiences to make it a better experience for our donors? Those are a couple of things to think about. The other thing that I think is really important is to help them understand that fundraising is really about telling effective stories. We have this need or this problem that we want to solve, but in order to do that, in order to overcome this problem that we have, we need help getting to the solution. We need, the heroes, so to speak, of our story, our donors, to come in and make donations so that we can then provide a solution to this problem, and donors can help make that possible. So helping them understand that telling great stories is really what fundraising is all about, I think helps people remember that it's not just about asking for money. It's actually about communication, which many of them are really good at. And it's about telling these compelling stories, telling a story about a need, about a person, about a project, all those things, right? And helping them understand that that's something that they can do without actually having to ask for money also lowers the stakes for them, right? They no longer feel like they have to be out there asking for lots of money. They can just be out there telling stories. They can be out there spreading the message, getting the word out, being an ambassador for your organization. That's a really powerful job for them to be in, and something that's really useful for you, right? Like, you want your message to be out in the community. You want people to hear it. You want them to respond to it. And the more people who you have who are out there sharing that message and sharing the story, the better. So that's something to think about. I also think that the bonus in all of this is that telling stories feels way more natural to people than going out and asking for money, right? So I think I read somewhere once that, about 65% of human communication is actually narrative and gossip and story-like communication. So we're really used to talking in narratives and talking about things that have happened to us or things that will happen, whatever the story might be, right? So having board members tell these stories is actually going to feel much more natural for them as a way of communicating with people, as opposed to sitting down and talking through, the logistics of giving and, talking about these very kind of hard facts about it, right? Which they may have had to memorize or they feel really nervous about telling. Instead, they can sit down, they can tell a story. And it's really good when they can tell their personal story about giving. This is what I think is really exciting. So when we can empower board members not only to tell the story of our organization, but to tell their story about why they're a donor, that is a really powerful tool for them, right? And that's because their personal story will communicate their values, their beliefs, their worldviews, their decision to participate in this great organization. And that's a really compelling story to people who are their peers, people who are also interested potentially in giving to this organization, or who identify as a social peer of this board member. So let me tell you a little bit more about what I mean by this with the personal story aspect. So ideally, what we want board members to do is talk about why they decided to take on this task of being a leader for your organization, and why they also are a donor themselves. What problem or issue did they see? What thing in the community spurred them to decide to make this decision? Why do they feel it's so important and so necessary for them to be there, to be a leader for your organization? That's the story we want them to tell. And it can take a little while to kind of get to this story. And I think that as a leader yourself for your organization, one of the things that you can do with board members is walk them through this process. Give them these questions to think about. Why did they decide to come into this role? Why was it so important for them to be a leader for this nonprofit? Why do they believe in being a board member? Why have they decided to be a donor? Ask those questions and get them to do some reflection, do some thinking. This could be a really great activity at the beginning of a board meeting. Have people come together, think about, kind of doing a partner exercise or something around what these activities are, or the answers to these questions are, and give them a chance to practice telling their story, or at least think about the story. Sometimes I'll find when I work with people on personal storytelling, it will take them a time or two to kind of go through this reflection process and identify what the story is. But it's really important that they do that, because the more you're engaged in this reflection process, the more you can continue to refine the story and really understand what it is. And that's really key, right? We want people to feel kind of simpatico, to feel in alignment with their own story, so that it feels good to tell people about why they're a board member, why they participate in this organization. So giving board members those reflection questions to identify their personal story, and then helping them understand that that is an easy way for them to go out and ask for donations, is really helpful. So that's my recommendation this week around activating your board members. Another thing that you can also do as well is think about getting your board members or kind of think about how you can regularly support them in this endeavor, whether it's regularly talking to them about their story, or providing them with other stories to tell aside from their own. So how can you give them little tools, areas of support that can continue to help them in telling the stories of this organization? So those are some things I would really encourage you to think about in terms of helping your board members. I always think that one of the big issues is that as fundraisers or EDs, we always think that, our board, like, if only they would participate in this, like, I just need them to fundraise. And your board members also feel the same way. Like, they probably want to help, but they don't know what to do, and they need more direction. And so this is one way that you can give them more direction around fundraising and around outreach in the community. Help them understand what their story is. Help them then go out into the community and tell that story. So those are my tips for you this week around activating your board members and involving them in storytelling. I hope that this is helpful for you if you have been thinking about how to engage your own board members in fundraising or communications, or even networking in the community. It's a really simple thing that you can do that I think will help them feel confident and prepared to talk about your organization. Because that's one of the things that a lot of them will fear, is that they don't have good talking points, so they're not sure what to say. They're not sure how to keep the conversation going when someone does ask them about the nonprofit that they work with. So give them something that they already know. They already know their own story. It's the one they know best. And the more you can help them with that story, help them tell that, the more successful and confident I think they'll feel when they're out and doing this work in the community. Okay, so I wanted to go into doing some Q&A, and I know there's a few of you who are watching live, so if you do want to send in your questions, would love to answer those for you. You can do so over on the Google Plus event page. You'll see there's a little chat box at the bottom where you can submit your questions. I'd love to answer those for you there. And I will double check that here momentarily just to see if we have any questions coming up. Okay. None yet, but for those of you who do, feel free to type them in. If you have questions about board fundraising or anything else, really, it doesn't have to be related to what I just talked about. It can be anything that maybe you're struggling with or you have a question around. Be happy to answer that for you. So I'll give folks a couple seconds here to type in some questions. Oh, great. I see one that came in. Terrific. So the question is, what do we do if board members are resistant to even telling stories? Great question. So I think that there does come a time when you have to kind of evaluate, are people doing what you need them to do on your board, right? Like, you ideally don't just want warm bodies and seats that are kind of helping out your organization. You want people who are there to help you in the ways that you need to be helped, that are willing to go the extra mile and be, super volunteers because they've stepped up to be a board member. And I think that when you have people who are continuously resistant to supporting the organization, to helping out with the projects that your staff or your ED need help with, it might be time for a tough conversation about what do we, like, is this the right opportunity for you? Is this the right board for you? And a good resource that I would direct you to is Simone Joyeux. She has wonderful articles about firing lousy board members. Not that your board members are, but I think it's just a good resource to be able to have those conversations about, is this the right opportunity for people, and helping them understand either on their own terms or helping them understand why you're asking them to leave is a really good thing. And I think that that can also create a lot of lessons learned for organizations. And by that, I mean that when you do have people who are not living up to the expectations that you've set out for them, what can you do differently next time in your recruiting? What are the key qualities you'll look for in people who will be your next board members? How can you make better hires, so to speak, when you're looking for those board members? So that would be one thing that I would think about is, one, think about, are they the right fit for your board? And if they're not, how can you have those conversations about asking them to leave, which are tough conversations, but sometimes necessary. And the second is, how can you do kind of like a post-mortem about that board member and their contributions once they've gone, to figure out what you can do differently next time for finding the right people for your organization's board. So those are my two suggestions for that around what should you do if board members are even resistant to storytelling, as some might be. They might think, it's outside of my job description, and if fundraising is on their job description, no, it's not. It's definitely a part of it. Great. So I'm glad I could answer that question that came in. And I don't see any others yet, although I'm happy to wait and see if there are a few other questions. Okay, let me just double check here. Terrific. All right, so that was the only question I see. I'm trying to think if there's any other good questions that people ask me often about board members and fundraising. I guess the other thing that I would say too around this is that it's often helpful to have someone on the board who is a champion or advocate for what you're trying to do. So if you can find someone who can be kind of like your ally for this work, that can often be really helpful, because if change can be initiated from within the board rather than you coming externally and saying, this is what we want you to do, that can sometimes make the process a little easier. So if you have board members who are really eager, who are really great public speakers, or who like to fundraise, or who have a willingness to help you on some level, think about talking to them outside of a board meeting, having conversations about what needs to change, how can they support that, how can they be a leader in a different way for the board, and asking them what you can do to support them in kind of initiating this change at the board level. That can also be a really great way to go about doing this. Okay. Well, terrific. Well, I think we may wrap up a little bit early this week, but I'm glad I could spend some time with all of you here again. I hope that this was helpful. I love being able to talk about different topics each week related to storytelling, and working with board members has been top of mind for me personally recently. So I thought I would answer some FAQs about that. But if there is a topic that you'd like me to cover in the future, would love to hear from you. You can leave a comment on the Google Hangout page. Let me know what sort of things you'd like me to talk about next week. We do these Hangouts every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific. Would love for you to come back again next week. Well, I don't know what we're going to cover next week yet, but I'm sure it'll be good. So mark it on your calendars. Think about bringing questions you have about fundraising or storytelling. Would love to answer those for you. And in the meantime, if you're looking for some additional resources on storytelling, I have a new book coming out in April called The Storytelling Nonprofit. It's currently available on pre-order, and I would love to share that with you. It's a lot of research and information that I've collected over the last few years around best practices for nonprofit storytelling. And you can find out more about that over at thestorytellingnonprofit.com/book. There's also a place to download a free chapter of the book as well if you're interested in previewing it and seeing what it's like and if it's something you'll enjoy. The free chapter is actually about collecting stories, so how to do good interviews, how to find story leads within your organization. So I hope you enjoy that. It's been a real exciting project for me to work on, and I'm so excited that we're going to start sending out the books on April 1st to people who have pre-ordered them. So if you're interested in that, I'd highly encourage you to check out the forthcoming book, and hopefully that can also be a resource to you and your board if you're looking to tell more stories. So thanks to everyone so much for being here this week. I'm really glad I could spend some time hanging out with you and sharing a little bit more about nonprofit storytelling. I'll be back here again next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific with another mini lesson on storytelling and to answer some more questions. Take care.